Hello. Let's continue with the list. Where are we? 75 to 71. 75, Scoop by Evelyn Waugh. In the previous video of the list, I talked about Brideshead Revisited, and I said I really liked it. And what I did not like about Evelyn Waugh's writing or novels, I didn't like it when he was being excessively witty and humorous. I just felt that he was really pushing for the humor. And this is an example. Scoop, while it is good and while it is funny and ironic, my personal opinion is that it is very forced. It's one of those British sense of humor where the very opposite of what you expect to happen happens. What will occur because of this peculiar series of events that are unfolding. So what is happening in this novel is that the grand chief editor of this well-respected big British London newspaper has decided that one of the reporters has to go to Africa to report on the latest war. And the editor says, I want this reporter. And his assistant says, oh, are you sure that's the one that you want? And the editor, who is unquestionable, says, yes, that is the man to send to Africa to cover this event. The editor has made a bit of an error. This is not the reporter that he wants. The reporter that he's chosen is some very far-flung, provincial. He does the nature report. He talks about how the hedgehogs have made their annual appearance this spring. He talks about how the blue jays are nesting. I don't think you have any blue jays in England. Sorry, they're quite nice. He is a very quiet, reserved man who goes out looking around his garden. And they've decided to send him to a war zone in Africa. And it's a series of, oh, what's going to happen? Not to say it's bad. It's just, it is something of its time. If you just want to get a bit of that taste of early 20th century British humor, before things got really quite bizarre with Monty Python, the irony, the strange sarcasm, the stiff upper lip and all that. Yeah, it's one of those. It's just that I don't find it particularly humorous. Bit nerve-wracking, to be honest. Like, oh, this poor son of a bitch is being sent to Africa and he's hopeless. There's that. That's what it is. Right. Number 74, take a drink. A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Goddamn Hemingway. Ugh. I should have grown a mustache for this one. Hemingway, if you know a bit about him, he had many phases through his life. You could see that in his novels. And this one is A Farewell to Arms, First World War, very much based on Hemingway's experience in the First World War, where he was driving an ambulance for the Italian army. Just want to pause there about how serious writers used to be. The idea was that you couldn't be a writer unless you garnered some real life experience. And the best way to do that was to go off to war, because there's nothing that will teach you more about the world and psychology. I don't think writers today have that attitude. Anyway, let's talk about A Farewell to Arms. I think there's a lot of the good Hemingway feeling that we all appreciate. There's a situation where he needs to have a knee operation. There's a very funny scene that I think a lot of people are familiar with, where he's laying in the hospital and he's in love with his nurse. And this young doctor comes along and says, oh, you're gonna have to stay in bed for 3 months and I won't be able to operate for 2 months at least, and you're not allowed to drink any alcohol. And he's sort of nodding and saying, yes, okay. And then an older doctor comes by and he says, oh, I want to talk to the old doctor. The older doctor comes over and says, oh, don't worry, I'll operate tomorrow morning. Tonight only make sure you don't drink more than 1 bottle of wine and everything will be fine in a couple of weeks. Yeah, that's a very fun scene. I do enjoy that. So it is. It's a really great war novel. There's a bit in the end, maybe I'm giving too much away, where he and his fiancée wife, they get in a rowboat and they row from one side of Lake Geneva to another. Well, where would be the dangerous side of Lake Geneva? Well, Italy, of course. There's a good bit where they're in a rowboat and they're traveling from one country to another to try to escape wherever they are. And that was really very good. I enjoyed that a lot. I think it's Lake Geneva. 73, The Day of the Locusts by Nathaniel West. When I say The Day of the Locusts, do you imagine Locusts, because I did when I first read the novel. I thought it was going to be something like The Grapes of Wrath, where the locusts come and they destroy the crops, but it's nothing to do with that at all. The Day of the Locust is a Hollywood story. Simply put, he has to prostitute his artistic talent and integrity to work for the pictures, hoping that he will get enough money to finish his grand masterpiece, which is a picture of Hollywood in flames. And it's the story of that, about how people went to Hollywood with a lot of artistic hope, integrity, aspirations. And when they got there, they were cut low by the need for cold hard cash. The Day of the Locusts, the day when all of the locusts come and destroy everything you hoped for. It's quite good, very short. 72, A House for Mr. Biswas by V.S. Naipaul. This is a tricky one. I enjoyed it very much. This one is quite funny in a very sad and ironic kind of way. I guess because it's more modern than Scoop. There is an Indian man, a Hindu, and he is born in Trinidad and Tobago. He is moderately intelligent and he wants to make money and he wants to have a good life. And he really, really tries. He does try with his limited faculties to make a good life for himself. And A House for Mr. Biswas is his ultimate goal, to have a house for his family. His attempts to build that life for himself. Even though it's a very, very short scene in the novel, I do remember there's a part where he is a reporter and he's traveling around the city on a bicycle because that's all he can afford. And some ne'er-do-well steals the seat of his bicycle, but he can't afford anything else. So he has to ride on his bicycle standing up because there's no seat on his bike. It's really an excellent novel. I enjoyed it very, very much. A couple of weeks ago, I wasn't so taken with the other entry from V.S. Naipaul on this list. What is it? A Bend in the River? That's a hard one for me to read. As I say about almost every single book on the list, I should read it again. God, that's getting tiresome to hear, isn't it? But I should. I think the older you get, the more rereading you do, and you do less reading of new novels. It's just a wonderful story about how he tries. There's a beautiful daughter of a rich family, and he thinks, oh, she's beautiful and her family's rich. It would be nice to marry into that family. He does. That family of hers, they just dominate him so relentlessly. It's, God, it'll make you feel sad. Just trying to get ahead by marrying this rich woman, and they just really suck the life out of the poor guy. The final book for today, number 71, A High Wind in Jamaica by Richard Hughes. You've never heard of it, have you? I wouldn't, if it were not for this list. And that's why I'm making these videos, and that's why I want to talk about the list, because this novel is amazing. This is one of my favorite books on the entire list. Even if I had have come across this novel in a used bookstore, for some reason, all of the old editions that you will find in a used bookstore, they gave it this very weird pirate Hollywood romance. You know, the 1960s and 1970s, they were not very good for literature covers. They tried to make literature either look like it was a romance or look like it was some kind of an action-adventure thriller. A High Wind in Jamaica is, you've got to stick with it for the first 20 or 30 pages. There is a British family. They are living in Jamaica. They are trying to scrape some money out of a rum distillery. Is it a rum distillery or is it a sugar plantation? It's one or the other. No, they go hand in hand. But they're not doing a very good job of it. The parents are not completely giving up just yet. What they will do, though, is they plan to send their children back to England so that they can get a proper British education, because they feel that the children are getting a bit too wild living in Jamaica. So they put their kids on a boat back to England. The boat is hijacked by pirates. Come on, Gran, it's not hijacked. Well, what's the word when pirates board a ship and steal everything? I forget if they kill everyone. I don't think they do. I think they just rob everyone. However, the children end up on the pirate boat. I'll stop talking about the plot. I'm not giving too much away, promise you. The genius of this novel is that it's told from the children's perspective in the way that children don't remember events as catastrophically as they were. Like, for instance, at the very beginning of the novel, a typhoon sweeps across Jamaica and it causes terrible havoc. The buildings are destroyed. The sugar plantation is in ruins. This is a really serious event. Like the children are saying, oh, this is, they're imagining it as like the first real event of their lives. And then a short while later, perhaps not even 3 or 4 weeks later, the children are sort of remembering, oh yeah, do you remember there was a typhoon, there was a big storm. And it's so vague in their recollection because they're just, the world is so exciting and not traumatic, but for a child, it's bombarding with impression constantly, especially when the situation is changing, like if gone, because this new information that's coming in is really pushing out the old stuff very quickly. And that is what is happening in A High Wind in Jamaica. These children are trying, in their childish way, to make sense of the fact that they're now on a pirate ship and they feel that the pirates are not entirely happy about having children aboard, recalling the events, some of them very dramatic, which would make a terrible impression on a more adult mind, but in a childish mind, it makes an impression. However, it quickly fades away and they try to rationalize it. It's absolutely brilliant, and I really hope I can encourage you to read that novel because it is a masterpiece of perspective. The children are telling you the story of what they are going through, and they're telling it to you in a childish way. They're not describing the pathos and the misery and the suffering. They're just looking at it saying, he seems a bit angry to have done that to that person that we know. We'll go hide at the other end of the ship for a while because we don't want that to happen to us. And you, as the intelligent reader, you have to see, like, these kids are going through the shit. And they don't even realize it because they're kids. They've got nothing to compare it to. Their parents put them on a boat and said, you're going to Britain, and pirates took them. And now that's where they are. And they're like, yeah, we're going to Britain, but we're not really sure if the pirates are going to Britain, but we're just trying to stay out of the way of everyone who might hit us. Totally, completely brilliant. Love that novel. 5 novels. Which one should you read first? Well, absolutely. I cannot encourage you to read A High Wind in Jamaica. It's an adventure on the high seas, but it's literature. What's the difference between literature and a thriller? Absolutely nothing, just the quality of the writing. Oh, number 2, House for Mr. Biswas or Day of the Locusts? Well, if you want a short one, Day of the Locusts. If you want a really long comedy of, man, this poor dumbass is just trying to make a life for himself and he's getting, like, the abuse is coming from every single direction, then House for Mr. Biswas. So number 2 is a tie today. 3, Farewell to Arms. It's good. I always do like it when the First World War gets more notice because the Second World War got the lion's share. Lastly, Scoop. I just think that very high-handed, ironic British humor has had its day, and it's a bit hard to appreciate nowadays, for me, in any regard. I mean, if you like that old stuff, like I've never been a fan of P.G. Wodehouse. Yeah. So, some good entries on the list this week. What do we got next time? The next entry on the list, number 70. I'm going to do a whole video just about that one. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you're enjoying the list. I'm sticking with it. As soon as I begin to talk about these old books that I love, really love, I become a lot more animated, and I want you to read them. Please read those old books. There is a reason that these 100 books were chosen as the best of the 20th century. It's not a perfect list. I wouldn't have done it that way. But as a young man who needed a lot of guidance for reading, it has been an absolute wealth, a treasure chest of novels I don't think I ever would have heard of. A High Wind in Jamaica, I might have lived my entire life without having read that. And what a sad thing that would be, because it is so good. I'm going to read that next year. I'm going to make a video of it. The trouble is I've got to locate the books. I've got to read them, and I've got to find the time to make the video and do the editing. The editing is really what I don't like. Thank you very much for watching. Grant loves books. That's another entry onto the list. All right, take care.